All right, guys, let's watch this Preach video. Should you play War Within? It's probably a very appropriate video for a lot of people watching right now. Like press 1 in the chat if you're tuning in and you're just trying to wonder, like you haven't purchased it yet and you're just like wondering, should I buy this or not? Like there's probably so many people out there. Yeah. So let's watch this from Preach to see if Preach thinks you should play, and I'll give my feedback on whether I think you should play or not. All right. Rav the Avatar, just press 1. Hype. All right.
The War Within is here. The World Soul Saga, led by Mr. Metzen, has arrived. But one thing is clear: if you're talking to your friends, if you're on websites, if you're checking forums, you're checking live streams, Blizzard has a mountain of cynicism to climb over. The War Within, no big gameplay features, a little bit of delves here, and also when we see those characters come on, us players can't help but think of one thing: the Wounds Champion! What are they doing to fix this? Because, believe me, they're really trying. What prompted this? Well, I've jumped back into WoW to prepare for the War Within. I played through the alpha. It was very exciting, but different. And now that difference is really clear as to what the hell is going on. Blizzard have been ultra restrained, really restrained with this expansion, and I'm sure you guys have noticed, no mega gameplay feature, and certainly not an abundance of them, right? For years and years, we've been used to things like Warfronts and Islands are coming, and we've revamped all the daily quests, and now there's this big, like, tower that's coming in, and now we've got all this big crest system, and we've revamped this, and we've done this and this, whole little systems and things coming on to you, and this time it's like, everything's the same as Dragonflight, but we've got delves as well for people who don't like raiding, and also we've made a solo experience for the final boss, so you don't need to go into a raid if you just want to play through the story.
Dude, what is
solo
this?
Experience for the final boss, so you don't need to go into a raid if you just want to play through the story.
Look at that freeze frame. That's kind of hype. All right, I wanted to get the perfect freeze frame for this. I've been saying this since like MOP. Actually, I had this thought in like high school a little bit too. And the general thought is, if you have a really good game, it's kind of annoying that you have to reinvent the wheel every expansion. Because if you have something really good going, why would you want to reinvent the wheel? So when I first realized this is back when I played Call of Duty in high school, and I was playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and it was great. And then Black Ops came out and it sucked. And I was like, crap, why did they have to do that? And then I started thinking, wait a minute, they're going to release a new Call of Duty every year, no matter what, whether it's good or bad. Like, so we might see like bad, 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 good, good, bad, bad, good, bad. Like, no matter what, they're going to release it once a year because they want to make money. So it's like, crap, okay. How do we solve this? And then to me, the way to solve it is, instead of completely throwing everything out and starting up from scratch every time and like completely trying to reinvent the wheel with like brand new everything, it's like, let's just kind of keep what we have going that's working and slowly, very slowly iterate. All right, so the same is true with WoW expansions, in my opinion, right? So you have a World of Warcraft expansion, it's really good, say like Wrath of the Lich King or something. And then you come out with like Cataclysm, and it's like, all right, let's change everything and add all this new features. So it's like, well, what's the pro of doing that? Well, the pro of doing that is you have something to sell. You have something on your box. New rated battlegrounds, new feature, new this, new that, new, check it out. So it gives the marketing team something to run with. It's practical. But the downside of it is, like, if you had something that was working and then you just try to add in a bunch of new stuff, it might kind of suck. So a counter example to me in something that really works is something like Counter-Strike, right? They keep that same basic, simple algorithm formula that works, and they slowly, very slowly iterate over an incredibly long period of time because it's tried and true. It works. It's like, don't reinvent the wheel here. It works, right? People like it. Same thing with like chess, right? Chess, I like this analogy. It's like, if you were given like a year to come up with a better version of chess, could you do it? It's like, well, probably not. Chess is like a game that's lasted, what, thousands of years or whatever, like however long it's lasted. And then it's like, if you were given another year after that to come up with a third version of chess that was even better than the first and the second, could you do it? Okay, what about 10 chess versions in 10, 15 years later? It's like, no, at some point you can't keep iterating. Like, you have something that's good. Anyway, wrapping back to the point. Here we are. We have Warathan. There's not that much new. It's kind of like Dragonflight Plus. To me, that is a pro. I like that Blizzard's doing that. I don't want a bunch of new crap that probably sucks. We know what we like. We want some new raids. We want some new mythics. We want some new content. We give us a new couple dungeons. Give us some raids. Bump up the level cap and make them not suck. That's what people want. People want content that doesn't suck, and you just want a little bit more of it and have a good time. We don't need a bunch of new crap that nobody's gonna play in a couple weeks. So I actually really like this. I like this take. It's fine, completely fine for me that there's not anything crazy new, right? Yeah, delves. Delves are new, but they're not like. We'll see. We'll see if delves suck or not. We'll see. I'm excited for them, I guess, to some degree, but they're not like trying to oversell it or overhype it, I think, either. Anyway, let's keep watching the video. That was like a 10-minute rant.
And everything else kind of stays the same. We've got hero talents, but they're kind of mostly passive, so don't worry about it too much. And you're like, huh. For a game that is built from the ground up for gameplay as its primary focus, it is its foundation of the game, that's kind of lacking. So where the hell is the attention going this time? What's happening with this big 6-year plan of the World Soul Saga? And the point is very clear. The story. Okay, this is tough. This is really tough because the cynicism and the wall surrounding World of Warcraft is humongous. It is massive. It is almost insurmountable, and you'll see it in the comments down below. And I want to be clear to the people who are upset at WoW. Who are you talking to? I'm right there with you. I totally get it. It's not surprising. We've been burned badly, my friends. We've burned badly, but we're not going to dwell on that. I get it. I understand it. But they're really trying. And I've had to sort of reflect on this a little bit because I actually did something as a streamer which was really kind of bad considering what they're trying to do, but not without cause. So that's why I decided to do this. So I jumped back in. They've got this pre-event going which allows you to level a character from 60 to 70 in like 30 minutes without abusing potions. Thumbs up. I was actually really surprised, and I've used this time to cap all my characters. Dragonflight was the very first time I did not have one of every class capped and ready to go, because obviously I wasn't making guides and things anymore. But I was like, oh wow, I can actually get up to date, which means I won't have these characters that start to linger and fester going into the war within and have to go through Dragonflight first. So I've been capping every character and refreshing myself on the gameplay and having a blast, and just generally really enjoying myself and dealing with massive UI issues. No, I'm not doing a full UI update. Sorry, I will update as I go, but I'm not promising that before you ask. So let's get to the meat of the matter, the story. Let's talk about a few things. So, what got me going was the pre-patch storyline involving Magni Bronzebeard. And every time Magni Bronzebeard appears on the screen, I can't help but think of Champion and the wounds. And I basically played out this story as I did read everything, and I was understanding what was going on. Like a stand-up comedy show, I was doing my streamer thing. And it was fine until a couple of hours later when I was sort of going to the gym, and I was thinking to myself,
preach W.
This was FF14. I would not have played this way. In fact, what actually happened was kind of serious and kind of heavy. And I started to reflect on it. I was like, I didn't even give it a fair shot. Now, why? And that's the crux of what we're talking about today, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this as well. Blizzard's got a massive problem in that they have devolved most of their characters into absolute memes. Complete memes because of the, I'll say it, atrocious storytelling we've had over the last few years. In particular, we are looking at BF8 and Shadowlands here. Shadowlands in particular. We've got some standout examples of just how horrendous the writing has been. You might remember the silly tweet we did during Shadowlands when you literally open the doors in Maldraxxus, you give them their home back, you re-armor the Primus's corpse and all these kinds of things, and then if you don't choose them, like, well, you're not allowed in anymore. It's so stupid. It's so... We literally provided this for you, and you're like, well, you're not coming in because you didn't choose us. Instead of any other system, such as we're allowed everywhere except this segment, which is for the Maldraxxus people only, right? This kind of thing. But no, you're just not allowed in. And the same with the Kyrians, the same with Revendreth, and all this awful butting of heads that happened. of gameplay and systems versus storytelling that did not mesh in any way, shape, or form, and led to these just massive illogical holes in what the hell was happening in the story for us as the player to force this down a certain road, and you just sat there going, this is stupid. It's just really stupid, and it makes no sense, and I hate it, and I don't like it, and of course, many people drifted away, and that was for a good reason. WoW coasted for a long time on its gameplay.
I have such an interesting perspective because for me, I didn't pay attention to the lore anyway. So it didn't bother me that it was bad because I didn't get it anyway. Now, the last year-ish, I've been getting more into the lore. And I've got to say, the Xalatath lore is pretty sweet. The Illyria lore is pretty sweet. The Wolverton lore going into it is pretty enticing. So it's kind of cool, but it's hard for me to actually give an accurate comparison because, like, transparently, like, I just didn't pay attention in Shadowlands about the lore. I was just grinding rank 1 titles. That's all I was doing. So, like, I can hear him and I trust him because a lot of people say the same thing, and it's like, okay, well, that criticism's probably coming from somewhere, but I feel like I don't have that firsthand experience there, you know? I was farming like Peekaboo in Arena, so.
It actually didn't matter too much to a lot of players if the story was kind of weak at points, because playing the game itself was fun enough. But of course, we get to Shadowlands and the gameplay itself devolves, right, into farming bloody soulbinds, and now I've got to spend half an hour in Torghast every week. And if I've got an alt, I need to spend multiplicative amounts of times in there and blow all my gold that I just can't really afford to be spending 250,000 gold for a slight item level increase on my legendary item and things like that. So the gameplay then suffered, and because WoW had coasted for so long on its good gameplay, and then the gameplay took a hit and the story was bad, implosion, explosion, all kinds of things going on. Now, Dragonflight saw a lot of those characters like Anduin just disappear for a while, so the last time we saw him was then. And now those characters are coming back because the story is the focus. Let's talk about the first thing. Is this a good idea to focus on the story? Yes, absolutely. In talking to the devs and speaking to lots of people, once the people did realize the grass was greener elsewhere, and yes, this is FF14, like, people found out you can absolutely tell one of the most compelling stories going in RPGs in an MMO. It's totally possible. If your writing is good enough and you spend time with these characters and you care about these characters, you could reduce millions of players to tears on a semi-regular basis and have them overjoyed and extraordinarily excited as well. All the emotional beats can be hit in an MMO. FF14, in my opinion, after 20... a lot more experience than that, actually, has two of the best RPG stories ever told happening within that game. And so they realize, like, this is a big deal. If we can get our players to actually care about our characters, to be invested in their presence, then we have something special here, because our gameplay still exists. And that's why, going into Dragonflight from the War Within, the gameplay is tight. Dragonflight did a solid job of getting the gameplay back on point, relatively simplistic systems of how you control your character, tightening all that up, and they're going to continue that going forward without major deviation, because that works. Now they need people to care about the characters, and this is the problem, right? This is the problem, because for the last few years they have really mullered and buried a lot of those characters. And when I see Jaina pop on the screen now, I'm like, oh, she's going to say something and then she's going to teleport away and disappear for ages. Sure enough, during the War Within pre-patch, that's exactly what she does. It's the pre-patch. And I was like, there it is. And these characters are memes. And I'm looking at Magni and I'm thinking about this story. And this story is somebody who's dedicated their entire life to being communicating through Azeroth. And she's abandoned him. She's betrayed him. He can't communicate anymore. Now, what really got me going is this actually parallels a major story beat in one of FF14's expansions that did result in the payoff, which came in Endwalker, of this build-up, paid off in a way that people talk about it as like one of the most devastatingly crushing moments they've had in media, not just books or movies or video games, in media. It's haunting. It's haunting, and it makes you feel awful, but in like a good way. Like, it's hard to describe without spoiling it, but when you witness and the revelation of what's been going on happens to you, you're like, oh my god. Oh, and you're crushed. Now, They're trying to do a DC universe here. That's for the comic book movie knowers and speedrun through this to get you to care about it. But how do they overcome this? This is the big problem. This is what Metzen and Co. is working on in the background. It's ironic that we're talking about this now because a lot of people have been questioning where is Metzen. And I've tried to have talks with Metzen and stuff earlier on, and it does appear for the most part that Metzen is kind of on a media blackout besides very specific things that he can do for Blizzard and not being involved in interviews and focusing entirely on the game. And that's great. How do they fix this? How do they get over this wall of cynicism? How do they repair the damage done to their characters? The damage done to Sylvanas, the damage done to Anduin, because I know right now that a lot of you, and I gauged my a few thousand people in Twitch, what do you think of Anduin right now? And the response was overwhelming. He's a pussy. He's a cook. He's a loser. He's a shambles and all this. And that's really sad for me because the story they're trying to tell, or have been trying to tell, particularly in the Shadowlands, because we didn't really see him since then, is really dark and it's really sad. And a lot of work has been put into it, but it just did not come across in that storytelling at all. And the storytelling continues in a really good way in the War Within. And it's hard for... They're hoping people will take a step back and reconnect with these characters, because if they...
One of the things that's helped me view retail differently is... And I've talked about this, I've talked about it yesterday, I've talked about it in the past. So if you've heard me say this, I'm going to be repeating myself a little here, but I think it pertains to the same point. I think about retail as a different entity than just World of Warcraft. When I think of retail as World of Warcraft, the game I played growing up, I'm going to be honest here, guys, it actually kind of pisses me off. It actually makes me upset. But when I think of World of Warcraft retail as a brand new game, a WoW, let's not call it Warcraft, let's call it whatever you want to call it. Let's just call it WoW 2 or something. It's actually really fun. It's just different. It's just very, very, very different. So if I disassociate retail with WoW, I actually tend to like it a lot more. I actually tend to find myself like, oh, wow, this is actually kind of cool. I had to do this, I think, starting like Dragonflight-ish, maybe a little bit even in Shadowlands, where it's like, I was really having this mental block of enjoying it as World of Warcraft. And I'm like, you know what? Let me put the past behind me and just think about it as a new experience. Let me think about it as it's just a brand new thing. And when I started doing that, like, it actually is a lot more fun, because standing alone, it's really nice. It's just when you connect it to that childhood memory of World of Warcraft, it's just not that. So anyway, I think, yeah. Do you guys agree with that in general? Do you guys agree with that in general? I agree, exactly. Agree, yeah. Like, that is definitely the mindset that has helped me to move forward just a little bit. It's like, oh, wow, this new thing is really fun. Let's just not call it WoW or not think about it as WoW much. It's not that game is from my childhood, right?
They can have the tight gameplay and a great story. They have the winning combination. They have it. But there's a lot of other things to fix. The pacing of the story, like I said, I've played through the War Within. It's missing all the cutscenes, and the War Within pre-patch gives me hope for this. The pacing of the story. If you've been back to Dragonflight in the last, say, 6 months and played through the campaign, you will know the pacing of the story is not good. Particular highlights here of Virinoth, the Ice Dragon Lady, who, if you just play through the campaign back-to-back without the weird breaks, and we'll come back to that, is baddie, best mate, member of the Avengers, all in about 25 minutes. There's just no room that breathes. There's no subtlety to it. There's no nuance going on with this. It's not built up. There's no speculation. There's no theorizing. There's no lots of straws falling on the camel's back that makes her switch, and then us to trust her and to earn that trust and do all those things. It's all like hammered into you as fast as humanly possible to keep the story going. Because, of course, there is a general mindset that World of Warcraft players don't care about the story, and you've got a circular situation there. If your story is not good and compelling, then why would we care about the story? So I don't care about the story, so I'm not interested when you end up like me, and your story is getting compelling, and I don't care because I'm coming into the story.
Press 1 in the chat if you generally care about a game having a good story. Press 2 in the chat if you don't care at all about a story, just give me some good gameplay. Okay, I see like a lot of ones. Yeah. And in an ideal world, you want both, right? I mean, you want both. Like it's like why do you want to choose? You want a game with great story and great gameplay, right? But like if you're going to have a focus and that focus shifts between a certain amount of set hours you can work on something, like, yeah.
Expecting it to be bad, and therefore it just goes round and round in a circle, and they're trying to pull that back by saying, look, we're going to do this story over 6 years.
Someone in the chat, Nikki, says, how much of the story of Elden Ring do you remember? Because Elden Ring has just like really good gameplay. The story for me in Elden Ring is very botchy because like the quests aren't straightforward. Like you'll just sometimes skip a whole quest chain because like there's no quest log or anything, and you get like bits and pieces of it, and it's really epic, but at the same time the gameplay like just holds it down. That's a fair thing to think about, you know? Yeah, it's really vague. You kind of remember the cinematics, it's botchy, but yeah.
We're dropping subtle hints, like Terran pointed out in their Wowcast. It's like we've had Xalatath, like shadows of her appearing for quite some time now. We're really starting to foreshadow. We're starting to do these things, but these things don't really happen in the WoW story, and certainly not for the last few years, that make any sense. Suddenly just like, rah, Ashara's here now, with the patch, and now there's a city under the ocean that's been there for 10,000 years, but it looks like it's been developed for like 6 weeks, right? It's not adding up. There's a logical fallacy going on here, and it doesn't make any sense, and now they're saying like, look, we're going to make logical sense. One thing I will say is The War Within, without spoilers, does make logical sense. There's a lot going on there that works. So, pacing. One thing I really liked about this War Within pre-patch system is the pacing of the little cutscenes was much, much better, because they weren't out to just be exposition overload, which a lot of the cutscenes in WoW have been for a long time, including Dragonflight, where you just randomly get a cutscene at the end of a quest line or something, and everybody just does loads of things all at once to move the story forward. We go from like, we're going on the offensive, to then suddenly all these big stars appear, and now we're the Avengers, and now we're doing this. That happens in like one cutscene. This time it's Illyria and Khadgar, just bringing Illyria in. Little bit of exposition, little bit of story, a little bit of temptation, and then off you go to do relevant quest lines. I was like, this is better.
Was Khadgar flirting with Illyria there? Did you guys catch that? Like, bro, she's married. Oh, no? Okay, never mind. Okay, all right.
This is better. This is much better. Then we get the Magni cutscene. We understand that he's doing it for us. He hates what's happened. Okay. He's doubting Azeroth herself, and he's injured because obviously he's going to reveal what we need to go to the Isle of Dawn, which is the War Within launch. But that's it. And after that, there's some post-cutscene stuff for the people who are interested, with the family, introducing these characters that are going to get to know them War Within, giving you a little bit more backstory, a little bit more, but it's not a lot. It's a little bit. We just get a little bit of development for Magni, and then it stops. Much better. And only a couple of quests in between. Okay. Skippable if you don't want to watch them. But for everybody else, this is much, much better. This pacing has to be better. I haven't listened to the Metzen interview yet, to be honest with you, because it's the morning of. But I have seen some feedback on Twitter about our worst fears being realized, is that they're still going to go with the storyline being broken into chunks. I think this is a massive mistake. I don't know who's watching at Blizzard, but I think this is a huge mistake. I really do. The other games that you're trying to compete against, FF14, Guild Wars 2 even, which does its story like this as well, releases its story in a massive, massive chunk at the start. It's actually a very enjoyable experience at the start of the expansions to play through this epic story, which ultimately in WoW would, result in the raid. But they're still probably going to break it up into these bite-sized pieces, which come every few weeks, couple of weeks, something like that. This pacing issue needs to be resolved, because frankly, I'm not the only one who forgets the details of what happened previously by the time the next bit rolls around, and therefore my interest has waned a little bit. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember we kind of did something like that, right? You remember the main points, but like the little details and subtleties that immerse you into a story, they get lost, and what you end up with is this like every few weeks 1 hour segment of story that you play through, and then you go through it so quick.
Do you guys agree or disagree with Preach's take here? Like, so if you release all the content front loaded, you play through it all, then you quit, and then you don't have anything for months, it kind of sucks. But at the same time, if you have people hit max level and there's nothing to do because you're just waiting for the content patch to come out, that also kind of sucks. Like, for example, in War Within, we don't actually get Mythic Plus for almost a month after the launch. So a lot of players that are interested in Mythic Plus have a month of nothing. Same thing with Mythic Raiders. I think the arena season might start after like 3 weeks. And then like the first content patch after that's probably gonna be a while. So it's like, you don't want to starve players for content either, right? Yeah, I don't know.
Quickly, it doesn't really soak in, and then you're like moving on and the references are gone, and by the time you get to the next part, whenever that releases in whichever patch or anything like that, you're like, oh, okay, yeah. Or the next week, which is how they've done it a long time. It's like another week passes and you just kind of, it's like a book that you read 1 page of a week, right? You forget some of the stuff that's happened in the last few pages because you're spreading this so thin.
That is true.
And I know the story isn't going to be as robust as we would expect from 14 or Guild Wars, but that gap is a pain point that I think needs to be resolved, and certainly it's probably not going to be done for War Within, but maybe for Midnight they should consider doing like a big story beat that goes all the way through, that isn't just like exploring the zones in the campaign, which is many separate stories that don't push the main narrative forward that much like Hallowfall does in War Within, and then we're into the Nerubians by then, but the rest of it is sort of groundwork and setting. And FF14's expansion Dawn Trail, even if you haven't played it, has recently hit this issue because they spent a lot of time world building without the main narrative going forward very much, and you can see that expansion has had mixed reviews because they weren't just like going hard on the main theme, which is a slight difference they've made in the storytelling here. And I don't want WoW to fall into that trap because first impressions are everything. So, how to fix these characters that have been turned into memes into characters we care about? All the evidence is there, everything they're going to do, and their pacing is getting better. So I've decided this. I actually did this with Guild Wars 2 and it worked out phenomenally. I'm gonna let the past go.
Dude, that's what I said like halfway in the video when I was pausing it. You gotta let the past go and just judge it on what it is, and not think of like where we came from. It's like, all right, let's just play the game right now. Yeah, that's the mindset, man. If you want to enjoy it, that is the mindset you have to take at this point, man. Like you have to adopt this if you want to have fun, it feels like, man.
I'm gonna let it go. I'm gonna give him a chance. By doing that, I'm going to pretty much forget everything that happened pre the War Within.
Yeah,
I'm going to pretend I've never met Magni Bronzebeard before. I'm going to pretend I've never met Khadgar before, Jaina, all those things. All the things that have twisted and mutilated a lot of this story over the last few years. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to treat it as fresh. I'm going to treat it as new and see if I have a newfound interest in this world beyond its raids, beyond its talents, beyond its combat.
Dude, Moonguard, Preach, hear me out. It's a good time, all right? People are talking, interacting. There's a lot of things that happen in the end. Like, you're gonna have a good time past just the world, Preach, all right? Give it a chance, okay?
Beyond the things that I have loved for all these years, for a story I have wanted to enjoy for so long. I'm gonna give it a try. I don't know what will come out of it, and in fact, I have already played the War Within story. But now I'm going to come in with fresh eyes because I skipped over the Dwarven story. Why? I hate the dwarves in Warcraft. They're so annoying, so I skipped over them. I'm going to come to it with fresh eyes and see what comes out the other end. And I'll report back to you on whether or not it changed anything for me. Are we there yet? Are we on the way to something magnificent? I don't know. But
wait. What did I just miss? Everyone in the chat is freaking out. I was kind of spaced for like a couple seconds. Did I miss something? Oh, he doesn't like dwarves. Oh.
and see what comes out the other end. And I'll report back to you on whether or not it changed anything for me. Are we there yet? Are we on the way to something magnificent? I don't know. But Blizzard's clearly making concerted efforts to make this work. And every single time I go into this with that old mindset, I'm ready for failure.
Yeah.
And there's an old phrase that makes a lot of sense to me after doing the recent stuff. If you go out looking for a fight, you're going to find a fight. And if I go into a WoW story looking for it to be crap, I'm going to find things that I don't like.
Yeah.
So, let's see what Metzen's got for us.
Dude, that's exactly what I said like halfway through the video on that outro. I 100% agree. If we're going to have fun in War Within, I think going in with this fresh mind of like, let's let this whole idea of World of Warcraft and its past go. Let's just play War Within as this new game. And this is something I started doing in like Shadowlands and a little bit of Dragonflight, and then like now with War Within, like I feel like that's the best way to enjoy it. Getting back on the title though, should you play War Within? I feel like, I mean, that probably helps answer it for a lot of people. But to go a little bit deeper, I think if you're, it depends why you quit in the first place. If you quit because the lack of story just like sucked, and the new story's wrapping you back in, you should absolutely play, because I think they're doing way better in that way. If you quit because you didn't have the time because you couldn't find queues for PvE or PvP, I think War Within helps that too. You have BG Blitz, you have solo shuffles from Dragonflight, you have delves for solo content, and you have story mode raiding. So it helps the time issue quite a bit as well. And warbands help that too, because you can do things account wide. So if you quit from a lack of time because you couldn't find anything to do, because you couldn't find the groups, because you didn't have the time to invest in like social networking online, like meeting groups and guilds and like stuff like that, like that's probably going to be a massive win here too. So maybe you should check it out as well. If you quit because you don't like the gameplay, like Preach said at the beginning of this video, is 99% the same. I've got to be transparent. Honestly, for me, that is kind of a big deal, and that's the hurdle I'm struggling with personally, because the gameplay is one of my biggest problems for the PvP side of things. For PvE, though, I'm looking at it with some fresh eyes. Maybe the gameplay actually owns for PvE, and maybe I'm really going to enjoy that. So that's kind of the angle I'm trying to hit War Within at, like fresh mind, fresh eyes, fresh angle, check out the gameplay in a new perspective in the PvE side of things. Trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, I guess a final point. If you like mount collecting, transmog farming, achievement hunting, this is the expansion for you because you got warbands. All right. So I feel like that's like the most honest review I can give it, right? Those are the reasons to play versus the reasons not to play. Okay?